right, folks, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Got a nice crowd, fellow manufacturing, I guess, makers. So, I introduce myself, Luis Solano. I'm with Google Cloud. I'm an industry development manager for manufacturing. We'll introduce our guests in a second here, but just to give you some perspective on why I talk about some of the things I talk about and where I'm coming from. I am an operations person, so I've been a plant manager, VP of Ops, SVP of Supply Chain. I'm not a technologist, okay? My role at Google is to help our sellers and our technologists understand what problems you guys are trying to solve as manufacturers. So the things I talk about are coming from that view of the world, right? My view is to figure out how do we impact the P&L, how do we impact the balance sheet, how do you solve the challenges you guys are trying to solve every day out there in the manufacturing world. All right, so let's talk a little bit about kind of at a high level what we're seeing from Google, at Google Cloud in terms of the manufacturing space. And obviously, we'd love to have you guys validate some of this stuff a little later on. So 3 different segments. B2C segment, kind of the most traditional one, I would say. A lot of effort and time and energy being spent to try to customize or drive customization for end users, right? A lot of focus on customer experience. Smart, connected products. Everyone wants to become a software company. All right, we'll talk about that a little later, right? Even when it doesn't make any rational sense sometimes, you want to become a software company to create a solution. We'll talk about some of those. The middle part, B2B, the more traditional industrial type manufacturing, right? Those guys are really focused on the efficiency, cost efficiency side of things, right? Try to improve productivity, improve quality. The basic things that manufacturers have been trying to do for the last 30 years, whether you're using Six Sigma, Lean, and those things, it's really about trying to make those things happen in a more effective way using things like AI. And then last but not least, the B2B2C, typical kind of auto type of manufacturing, is really about customer centricity, driving the connection between the customer and the product. One of our customers calls it zero distance, which is a great way to describe the fact that you're trying to get as close as possible to how that customer uses the product, make that experience better, and more importantly, in many cases, get data on how your product's performing so you can improve the product and improve quality overall. So that's kind of a high level, kind of what we're seeing in the manufacturing space. So as I said earlier, I'm all about value and P&L. So this is a study from one of our consulting companies and helping you understand exactly what we're seeing as far as value. These numbers are pretty big, especially the 7 to 27% EBIT improvement for manufacturers. When I first saw that number, I was pretty skeptical. It's a pretty big number. But the interesting thing is that I actually validated this with a couple of customers, and they've said that these numbers make sense to them. They've had the same studies. One customer came back at 13%. The other customer came back at 11%. Apart from the operational improvements, which is obviously a segment for the manufacturers, let's talk about other areas where we see a lot of value coming from manufacturers, right? The first thing is customer service. Huge opportunity to use AI, especially GenAI in customer service. Think about what's happening in the world. If you order a product online today, you know exactly when that product leaves that company you buy it from, where it's at. You can control when that shipment arrives at your door. So when you expect that kind of service in the consumer side, and then you order a large order from a manufacturer, and they tell you it's going to be ready on April 15th, and they call you the day before, tell you it's going to be late, you're not very happy about it, right? So people expect to be able to understand what's going on with their orders, give better visibility. On the other side of the coin, manufacturers need to get better at available to promise, capacity to promise, to understand truly what they have available there, using technology for that is a great area, right? Marketing, obvious use cases there with content creation, using GenAI, specifically AI in general, huge opportunities there. I call GenAI, specifically in this area, I call it the poor man's CPQ. You can take every single product catalog you have, put it in a GenAI model, and now you can have a customer query that information in a very effective way, in terms of specifications, costs, things like that. Software engineering, look, everyone wants to become a software company, great. Now you have the opportunity to kind of leapfrog and build the capability in a very different way, using things like Koenig from our technology stack and other tools to help drive better software development, since you're just starting from scratch anyway in most cases. And last but not least, R&D. That's a huge area. I'll talk about that in more detail, but the bottom line is design to launch specifically is probably one of the most inefficient processes in manufacturers, and we'll talk about that, like I said, a little later. So how do I think about GenAI specifically? I think about it in 2 different ways, right? The first way is this concept of optimize, right? How do you improve the current state and how do you drive better processes? And the way I tell people to think of this as a first step, find where the paper is in your manufacturing operation and digitize that paper. It's a really simple first step, right? People like Renault, who's one of our big customers, that's the first thing they did, and they've saved over 200 million euros a year implementing what they call their industrial metaverse using our technology, right? So find the paper first. The other thing I think I talk to people about is to really take a look at this from a process standpoint. Pick a process in manufacturing, say it's plan to produce, right? Or procure to pay. Think about that process. Think about the decision points that occur throughout that process. And for each decision point, try to figure out what information is needed to make the decision better, okay? And can I use GenAI to support or even eliminate that decision for the employees who are making it, right? So if you take that approach, you'll find a lot of opportunities to optimize overall capabilities there. On the transform side, this is more of a longer term thing, creating new experiences, creating new personalization. This is really about the customer journey, the service journey, okay, distributor journey if you have a distributor in your supply chain, and really try and work through that process overall. So let's talk about in detail what we're seeing out there in terms of areas for creating value using AI specifically. R&D, as I mentioned earlier, a huge opportunity to improve there. Design to launch is probably the most ineffective area for manufacturers. Two reasons. The most obvious one is that very few products that start off as design actually make it to launch, so that's a typical drop-off, right? You only actually launch a few, typically 10 or 15% of the products you start off with. That's the most obvious thing. The less obvious one, which is a huge area of inefficiency, is that the design to launch process creates unnecessary SKUs because of over-designing or redesigning things that are actually very similar, right? I have one customer who makes HVAC units and hot water heaters. They have over 130 heater ignition assemblies in their portfolio, right? That's for a bill of material. They only have about 25 different water heaters. So there's 10 heater assemblies for each water heater. The only reason that happens is because engineers want to design things, right? So doing things like, for example, taking all your CAD files for all your designs, putting it into a GenAI model, and now allowing a design engineer to using natural language to query that and say, is there a design out there that has this specification, right? So they don't start with a blank sheet of paper and don't design something that's already exists in the portfolio overall, right? Huge opportunities there. The other thing on the R&D side is that a lot of this documentation is in spreadsheets, in notebooks, a lot of opportunity to take all those notes, especially if you're on the process side, formula side. A lot of research being done and basically put in different laptops, unfortunately. So ingesting all that data into a GenAI model and allowing these newer scientists to join your organization to use natural language to query that, huge opportunity to make improvements there. On the operations side, really a couple of areas that we're seeing a lot. Probably the number one area we're seeing in the operations side is a great starting point if you're thinking about where to start with GenAI, is people taking the technical manuals, process documents for either assets or just process in general and ingesting into a GenAI model, right? So as an example, if you're running a CNC machine and it's a new operator and they have a fault come up, fault F5, the ability of the operator to basically type in, how do I clear fault F5, right, is a huge benefit, right? And it really addresses a key issue that manufacturers are struggling with. I'm sure you guys are feeling the same thing. Probably the number one issue we're seeing in the U.S. as far as manufacturing impact is the inability of manufacturers to hire all the people they need. Right? On average in the U.S., we have about 600,000 open U.S. jobs. We fill about 20,000 a month. That's been happening for the last 7 years now. The scary thing about that metric is that by the year 2030, that's going to be 2 million open manufacturing jobs in the U.S. So what I tell customers today, when you're thinking about what you're trying to do with AI, whether it be GenAI or the traditional AI stuff, my suggestion is you're thinking about doubling productivity with the people you have, right? Because it will become the limiting factor to your growth. I know it's a very tall order, but that's the way you should be thinking about. Customer experiences. So things like modernizing customer service, I mentioned the kind of CPQ example. So if you have a product catalog, your specifications, all those documents are typically on a website, and put it in a GenAI model, 2 people can use it, or 2 groups of people can use it. Your customer service reps can now use that to get answers instead of relying on the traditional analysis-based approach, right? And your customers can use it to find the right products in your catalog overall, right? The other big area is really trying to understand your capacity to promise and availability to promise, right? Understand that information. If you think about the traditional sales and operations planning process, which is a nightmare for most manufacturers, typically that available to promise number is based on data that's at best a month old. What if you use GenAI to basically take a look at what the actual status of the manufacturing process, understand what's running, what's not, and adjust that estimate to a more closer to reality number based on what's happening on the plant floor, okay? A lot of work around basically on the customer service side, just content discovery like I mentioned earlier, a lot of work around the smart product side of things. That's, I think, obvious stuff out there that's happening. On sustainability, probably the second most common conversation I'm having with manufacturers. First, from a social responsibility standpoint, people want to show that they're good stewards of the earth, and customers are making buying decisions based on that. But it's, don't underestimate the fact that this is still a cost savings opportunity, right? Understanding how much utilities, energy you use, whether it be water or electricity, gas, understanding how much scrap you can eliminate. Scrap is actually driving waste, okay? Understanding how do you move goods efficiently so you're not moving stuff around and causing more carbon emissions, right? So those are kind of the general areas that we're seeing out there. Like I said, a great starting point for you if you're trying to figure out where to start with GenAI manufacturing is going to be those technical manuals for your machines and things like that. A couple of customer examples here, GE Appliances. This is actually my customer. So they're really using our Vertex AI capability to really have their smart consumer app help customers understand how to create recipes from the existing products they have in their refrigerator, for example. Helps reduce waste of food and things like that. And they have a HQ assistant, which is a kind of conversational AI that will interface with GenAI to answer questions, stuff like that. The cool thing about GEA, and I don't know if you know if GEA is in the audience here, this is all the kind of the front consumer-facing side, but we're also working on getting that manufacturing level data into our domain or BigQuery and start connecting those two. So as an example, when a technician goes out there and has a service call on a dishwasher and that dishwasher is leaking, can we take a look at the data created when that dishwasher was manufactured, understands there a challenge with something that happened in the manufacturing process. So the concept of a digital thread at scale, right? US Steel, these guys, basically the example I gave you about the technical manual is a great example. This is actually exactly where they started. They call it Mind, which is a tongue twister to say. But that's really helping the technicians really complete work orders, give them guidance on how to complete certain job steps. It's really a great reduction in repair times, less downtime, things like that. So that answers the other issue I mentioned earlier, which is, again, you're having a lot of high turnover. You can't hire the people you have or you want. The people who are coming on board to your companies, unlike the historical manufacturing worker that spends 15, 20 years at your company, most people new hires spend 18 months at a manufacturing firm. So you have to think about GenAI as almost like a knowledge management tool. How do I make experts faster, all right? If I'm gonna have trouble hiring someone and I'm only gonna have them for 18 months, I gotta figure out how do I give them the knowledge that what I call the machine whisperers have, whether they know that the machine's sounding a certain way and you have to adjust these things. You have to figure out how do you get that capability to those people. And GenAI, I think, is a great approach to kind of thinking about that. Okay? Tails is basically a technology and security company, and they've used our GenAI tools to really drive their intelligent protection platform to really drive better decision making and basically automate certain things that required human intervention before, right? And then last but not least, Continental Tires is really about basically trying to drive automotive GenAI solutions into the products they manufacture for OEMs. And I think there's an opportunity to really use that model for things like, for example, how do I use GenAI in an overall purchasing process or procurement process, things like that. All right, just to give you a sense of kind of how we see the world of data, especially machine level data from a Google standpoint. So if you think about GenAI, we believe that machine level data, typically telemetry data, is critical to make those models work effectively. Certainly you can do add a lot of value with transactional data or structured data like PDFs around products, stuff like that. Those are all high-value use cases. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out how to use that machine-level data. And so what we've done with our manufacturing data engine is build a solution that's basically been designed to help manufacturers and supply chain operators get to that data and use that data effectively. On the bottom row, what you see there is all the things that are part of Google Cloud, the horizontal solutions. I'm sure you guys have all worked with them in some shape or form, your technologies, right? BigQuery, PubSub, all those things. And those are all great, continue to be developed. What we said was, hey, we have to build a capability layer, which is what that middle row is, that allows people who are trying to create use cases for manufacturing supply chain to use those tools effectively. So there's 4 main things we solve for with this solution, right? The first thing, if you look on the right-hand side, is connecting to these data sources, right? If you have an MES or SCADA, okay, you're going to connect to those data sources. But what if all the data in your MES is insufficient to drive a use case, right? Maybe there's other data that you want to use directly from a PLC. So what Manufacturing Connect does there on the right-hand side, like I said, is it's basically a series of pre-developed protocols, it's close to 300 now, that allow you to select a PLC brand and model and very quickly connect to that PLC data source, okay? And basically ingest that data into the manufacturing data engine and into BigQuery eventually. When you see it says private and secure, there's 2 arrows going both directions. So the second thing we solve for is the same platform that allows you to connect to that data source and get data into the cloud is the same platform you can use to run a machine learning model or inference on the edge. It's not a different platform. It's an area where people are, a lot of people have a lot of analytics type packages out there, whether it be Ignition, Wonderware, OSIsoft, all those things are out there, great. But the bottom line, they're just acquiring data and doing analytics if you're doing some sort of dashboarding. You still have to figure out how do I run a model on the edge, right? And this platform does both things, right? That's the second thing. The third thing we solve for is if you guys have worked with this type of data, there's 0 context to this data. If I'm connected to a PLC output, it's giving me a number. That's what the data stream is, a tag, right? I don't know if it's giving me a number 150. I don't know if that's Fahrenheit or centigrade. Is it temperature? Is it spindle pressure? None of those things are relevant, right? Or evidence, excuse me. So you've got to be able to contextualize that data. So what we do with manufacturing data engines really give you a tool to contextualize data at the edge, okay? And align that context via schema to the actual payload, right? As opposed to putting the data into a data lake and then using the data lake to basically add the metadata there, which if you've tried to do that, you know that it's very difficult to do. In fact, most customers who come to us today have tried to do this with our competitors. They're actually stuck in that exact point. They say, I've got 10,000 tags in a data lake. I can't make heads or tails anymore, okay? So what we're trying to do is help you control that data. And we actually the advice I give customers today is the exact opposite of what our competitors say. I say, only send the data you need because of a use case to the data lake. Keep everything else on-prem. Go use case by use case. Figure out what data you need, bring it to the data lake, okay? If you don't have a value equation for that use case, why are you doing it, right? So every single use case has to have a value reason, a value supported reason behind it, and you do it for those reasons, right? The second thing we do with, or the other part of that third thing we do is that we allow you to control that data in a very precise way as far as what type of data gets to the cloud. For example, if your use case says, I only care about spindle pressure, if it changes, well, then we can basically, via formulas and other capabilities, look at that data stream, say, look at this data stream. If it doesn't change, ignore it. Don't send it anywhere. Just put it aside. Only send it to the cloud when it changes. So you can control the volume of data you're getting to the cloud overall. Things like temperature, for example. If you're getting a temperature reading that's coming at you at 10 times a second, do you really need all that data in the data lake? Or do you really need what the temperature is every 5 minutes on an average, right? So what we're doing is giving you control at the edge to make sure that you can actually maintain control over the data in BigQuery to drive the use cases. So what we're trying to do with this solution is we're going to focus on the middle and bottom row, like I said. Our partner is going to focus on developing offerings that use the MD engine. And we've got partners, as you guys know from the show, all over, and we're continuing to add more use cases here. This 3 just happens to be the 3 that won the real estate lottery, and I chose them to put them up here, but there's hundreds of other solutions out there for partners, right? The ones on the blue are the ones that we have developed. Frankly, those continue to go, but those will be in the 10s, where the partners are going to be in the 100s, right? Okay. And a lot of those solutions will be offered on Marketplace, so be able to quickly download those things and use them overall. All right, last but not least, one of the things that's being announced during this show actually is that our manufacturing data engine, what you see in the orange, yellowish color there, is going to be part of our Cortex solution framework, right? And all that means is there's going to be a lot more tooling around getting ERP-type data into that system, whether it be SAP, Oracle, or CRM like Salesforce, right? So it doesn't change any of the capabilities just talked about. It's just going to give us a little more capability in terms of Looker BI examples, frameworks for using Vertex AI and large language models within manufacturing, and things like that. Actually, I'm going to go back and go here and point out one other thing. Once you install a manufacturing data engine, you see that Vertex AI symbol at the bottom there? Right off the bat, you have access to all our large language model capabilities. Okay, and this has existed for over 2 years. My point in saying this is that before we were talking about GenAI, we knew you're going to have AI capabilities on the ground. And so the second you install MDE, you have access to Vertex AI. So we can today, right now, we can say, hey, here's an OE dashboard in Looker, and here's a chatbot using a large language model for your manual that you can actually query as an operator. Or one of the things we're working on right now, which I think is going to be the future, instead of dashboarding every single KPI, whether it be performance, availability, quality, or some version of that in manufacturing, only dashboard the basic things, and then use a large language model against that data to actually use natural language to query. What's been the OE of this plant across all 3 lines in the last 6 months? Okay? What's in the performance of first shift last year? Okay? What was the performance of first shift the last work order? All of those things are possible, and we're doing that today with some of the use cases we've created for our customers. All right, so that's Cortex framework. Again, great announcements there. We're going to continue to build our connections to SAP and Oracle and Salesforce. If you don't run any of those applications, doesn't mean it doesn't have value there. The framework can be used to build other integrations to other data sources in a way that can be scaled out very quickly and help you drive better value. All right, with that, let me introduce our special guest, Sandra Wagner from Koenig Bauer. She's the VP of Digitalization. So Sandra, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, why don't we start by maybe having you tell us a little bit about yourself and Koenig Bauer.
Yes. Koenig Bauer is an over 200 years old manufacturer. So I would say we are a long, long time in manufacturing. And what we are doing is we are doing printing presses. So huge machines, you know what comes out of the printing presses on your daily life, because it doesn't matter if it's a newspaper or your cereal in the morning or a can of a beverage. So we do all the machines in that variations, and we also have a business unit who is doing security printing, meaning, for example, banknotes, and we always explain it like we say, okay, you go into the supermarket, whatever you buy there, that is what our presses are producing, and we are also producing the banknotes where you can pay with that. That is more or less the range we have. So a lot of different machines, a lot of different processes, also in terms of manufacturing these machines. That is mainly who Koenig Bauer is.
So I'm familiar, 200-year-old manufacturer, right? And when I talk to the people I've talked to in the show, a lot of people come up and say, hey, we've got a lot of old equipment, and my response is, that's every plant in the world. You'll have a 1-year-old piece of equipment next to a 5-year-old piece of equipment next to a 10-year-old piece of equipment, right? So imagine 200 years of processes, right? I'm sure there's a 50-year-old piece of equipment out there in a plant.
There is, yeah.
All right. So, you guys have evolved at the pace of our technology. You've been an early adopter of Google Cloud, and you've kind of grown with us as we've developed things. Can you tell us a little about your journey so far?
Yeah. We started a couple of years ago mainly for our internal processes with Google Cloud to gather all the data Louis already explained from SAP, from Salesforce, from other data sources, machine data as well, to get our internal processes, let's say, streamlined, looking into stuff like production forecast, logistic forecast, even sales opportunity forecast. So I would say the classical stuff, you start with that. But as we are today also talking about business opportunities and business models, it was quite clear after we set this up and get used to it that we would also already looked on cases which are not only for ourselves are very useful, but also for our customers. So then on that base, we also developed solutions for our customers, let's say, in a separate line, but at the same speed.
Awesome. Can you give us an example of the latest products you guys have pioneered with Google AI?
Vertex AI and Gemini for internal cases as well, but also for external, for our customers. And we think that is really, for some of the reasons you mentioned, that is really a game changer technology.
All right. So why don't you go over kind of a little bit about your new products that you guys talked about?
Yeah. I just try to explain now from a customer perspective how we set all the tools up in a way that customers can use them, and that also opens up, let's say, new revenue streams for us. So I start with what we call the My Kyana. All of our digital projects has the Kyana name on it, like an own personality, and it's a classical, I would say, customer portal. But in that customer portal, you find everything. So every kind of digital product, and that is also, I think, a very important point to talk about, the possibility that customers can use subscription models in a very, very easy way. So underneath that portal is, of course, the Google Cloud, but there are also some stuff from our CRM system, some other technologies involved. So we really try to bundle to make the customer journey as easy as possible, because we know, especially in manufacturing, a lot of our customers are not used to digital technologies. They are not digital natives. So it's not only like having the technology and implementing the technology. We also thought right from the beginning about a way how to present that to our customers in a very easy and simple way. And that is where, let's say, everything starts. So what we also do have since a couple of years, but now we reworked on that, is machine data. That's a lot of data we gather every day. So classically, we do what most of the people do with our Kyana data. We gather the data, we build KPIs, we have some prediction stuff. This is an example how it looks like. And we will show in a couple of weeks to our customers an anonymous benchmarking in their market with their machines so that they can find out, are they really on the top level in terms of production, or might there be something where they can optimize stuff? And all of that is built on Google Cloud, and BigQuery is underneath it. So that's really a very valuable way, I think, to get these kind of data solutions, also in terms of a new business model to customers. And then when Vertex AI and Gemini came, as I mentioned before, we have a lot of variations in our machines, and as you said, older ones, new ones, and also a lot of documentation. And I think there's a lot of manufacturers in total different ways. Could be PDF, could be Word, could be spreadsheet, could be even something written down. And we gathered all that kind of technical information, the classical technical handbooks, but also application stuff and all that kind of things, and feeded it into the system to start with and say, look, this is like a first level support for our customers, because as Louis mentioned, we have a workforce problem, but our customers as well have a workforce problem. They're really struggling to get good people on board. And even if they find people, the onboarding of that people takes so much time and occupies the other people that the production is not running in the right way. So the idea behind it was, let's build a tool with the knowledge we have already and give that as well to customers. So to help them set up their operation, to onboard much easier new employees and all that kind of stuff. And now we combine that as well with our data solution. So as Louis said, if a production manager or plant manager comes in the morning, he can easily ask Gemini in terms of what happened in the last shift, what happened let's say, in the last week. And Gemini will tell him, okay, that threshold, there's something you have to look into it, or that OEE is different than we had it, let's say, in the week before, which is really a big game changer, I think not only in our industry, because a lot of people don't have time to go through these lots of dashboards and check everything out. We are used to, from a consumer perspective, to get easy answers in a very quick way, and that technology is possible to do it, and it's possible to have it all set, let's say, on one technology. And that is really for us and also for our customers a really big thing and a big, big help in their daily life and in optimizing their production and optimizing more into efficiency and getting the right answers out of the data. So that's just a quick technical screenshot how we built it. We will also launch, let's say, the mix together in a couple of weeks to all of our customers. So we are quite excited about that. And the first feedback from the beta testers was quite good. And I think that might be also a good solution to think about, not only in terms of do your internal, let's say, optimization and use that technology, but also right from the start, think about if that is useful for my production, for my facility, for my processes, there might be an opportunity that that will be also useful for your customers, and that opens up new revenue streams aside the classical machine you manufacture. And that, I think, is also a wonderful thing which comes with that technology, that because, yes, as you said, everyone wants to become a software company. We are not different in that, and that is really a step to go into that direction.
Thank you. So going back to the connected data story, how are you combining data to create the democratized knowledge base using Gemini? Because you mentioned all the sources, right? It could be ERP, it could be notes, another source, for example, that is rarely looked at, as give you two areas to look at. Your purchasing agreements. You sign a purchasing agreement, simply attached to the vendor record in ERP, and it's never looked at again. If you're the buyer that's been there 15 years, you know exactly what the discount points are, what the volume rates are, things like that. But if you're a new buyer, or new purchaser, excuse me, why not put that all in the GenAI model and allow that buyer to query with natural language? The other area I would look at, huge opportunity, is all the notes and documentation that maintenance technicians put into your CMS when they do a PM or repair something. Huge opportunity. Ingest all that stuff in the GenAI model, categorize it, and help you drive predictive maintenance down the road with that capability. So I'd love to hear in terms of what how you democratize that knowledge base.
I mean, we also do it parallel. So we have an internal, let's say, what we call now the knowledge base, where we try to feed everything in it, because a couple of our really brilliant technicians and engineers will unfortunately retire in the next years. That is really a big struggle for us. And setting up a classical knowledge base, I don't know whoever did that in the past. That's a horrible thing to do, because you need to structure everything. Everyone has to be on board. It's super time consuming, and we never succeeded in that. I will be totally honest about that. But when we saw that technology and how easy it is to get the data in, and how easy it is to spread that data into our internal organization, that was for us, that was just like a no-brainer. Let's do it and put it inside of it, because we know we are facing that retirement problem. So that is, I would say, the internal part. And in a smaller version, we are doing it as well for our customers, because our people are retiring, their people are retiring, so they need, let's say, the core as well, so it's always parallel. And we try really to get everything which is valuable inside the system, so that new people can easily just ask, what does that mean, what is that, why is that, and gets an easy answer.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think I mentioned, I think of GenAI as a knowledge management tool. One of the reasons I like to talk about it that way is because it is a tool that allows you to take that unstructured knowledge that's in people's heads, right, and other documentation that's kind of notes and not very finely put together and documented, into a structured format, right? And so that's really what you're doing. You're trying to have GenAI replace the institutional knowledge that's leaving because people are retiring, to Sandra's point, and try to create that kind of operator assistant from that standpoint. Couple of things here just to wrap things up. So appreciate your time. We've got some time now for some Q&A, but one last comment I make, I always finish all our conversations with customers with this: AI is not an easy button, okay? Don't think it's going to solve process problems. I'll give you one example that I use all the time. I had a customer come to me and say, you know what, we have 50 docks in our loading area, or doors in our loading docks, and we keep making loading errors, meaning that I pick up a pallet and put it in truck number 10 instead of truck number 9. I want to use AI to prevent that from happening. And my response was, I've been in thousands of plants. I've seen operations that have 0 loading errors, What do you need AI for that? It's literally someone taking a pallet, forgetting where they're going, and putting it into another truck, right? So again, it's not an easy button for process problems, right? You got to get the process where it needs to be. And I say that because manufacturers like easy buttons. If you don't believe me, look at all the dashboard and all that stuff that people have out there that barely use, okay?